Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Dr. Justin Feldman from Feldman Physical Therapy and Performance, and today we're going to cover a first look impression of the brand new Garmin Enduro Health and Fitness Watch. I've had this for a week now, put it through some pretty good tests and uses, and we'll chat about some of the differences between this and the Fenix 6X Pro that I've been using for, man, feels like a couple of years now. And we'll talk about why some of the negatives that people are talking about, some of the things people are saying are missing from the Enduro, I personally say are no big deal. We'll run through the setup process, and then at the end, make sure to stay tuned. We talk about some health and fitness metrics that this watch, as well as some legacy watches, are now able to track, and when you may or may not want to use them. If you find that information helpful, you find this type of stuff helpful, please, before we dive all the way in here, go ahead, subscribe to the channel. Really helps us out a lot. We try to cover a lot of different things, health, fitness, as well as throw in some technology and some other tips in there for you. So if that's helpful for you, please go ahead and subscribe, and let's jump right in, see what the Enduro has in store. So for me, first impression, pulled this guy out of the box, and I have to say, I couldn't get over how lightweight it is. I had heard and read about the bigger battery, and I was curious to feel the difference. I love my Fenix 6X. I love what it can do, but it's a heavy watch, and you know it's on your wrist. This, combined with the nylon Ultra Fit band that Garmin's introducing with this watch, it's a really lightweight watch, and it just kind of disappears on your wrist. Very comfortable and easy to wear all the time. We get into a lot of stuff here with different sleep metrics and other health data that we ask people to wear their watch 24/7. And the biggest gripe we get from people is they don't like sleeping in something big and bulky and heavy. And I will say this is not something that I even notice on my wrist, sleeping. I found that it just sort of fits and sits there, not an issue at all. When it comes to setup, super easy to set up, very straightforward. Garmin walks you through the whole thing. You set this guy up and open up your app. You're gonna just go down and we're gonna add another device. One little tip here is that I like to not set the new device as the default tracker for the health and fitness metrics and activity tracker right away. What I like to do is leave the old one as the default, set this whole thing up, and then it will take through Garmin's Physio TrueUp and bring all the old statistics into the new device. And then from there, I will make the new device after a little bit of time as my default tracker, if it's gonna be my default tracker. In this case, it's going to be. And so after I set everything up, let all the data sync through, then I ran in there and made that the default tracker, and works like a charm. Everything's set up pretty quickly. Phone and the watch paired easily, not a problem at all. Typical Garmin experience for me there. So when I grabbed this guy out of the box, it had about 75% battery. It was 3/4 charged, and it told me that I was gonna get 34 days of battery life, which is just insane for me. After I tweaked my settings a little bit, I turned on my pulse ox overnight, made sure the heart rate was set to always on, changed some of the display brightness settings. Then this went to 19 days, which is still pretty crazy. And I've been using it now for a week, and that seems pretty accurate. Even though I've done some really long activities that we'll talk about, it seems to get pretty good. And all of that is without any solar charging. If we take a look at Garmin's website here, we're gonna see that they say we're gonna get up to 50 days of battery life in smartwatch mode. So that's just regular wearing mode. That's getting notifications. I usually keep my notifications turned to off. You'll see that we'll have up to 130 days if you put it into battery saver watch mode. And that can go up to a year with solar charging. And then we'll look at GPS mode getting almost 70 hours or 80 hours if we use the solar charging. And put that into max battery GPS mode, which will decrease the accuracy of the GPS a little bit. It'll take less frequent satellite readings. Then from there, we're gonna get 200 hours of battery life, or 300 hours if we put it into solar mode. So that is just an astounding amount of battery life. And really, at that point, I'm gonna lose my charger is really what's gonna happen to me here. And so the battery life on this is really insane. And that's really where I think this watch falls into Garmin's current line of products, is looking at people who battery life is their primary concern. So if you're somebody who thinks, all right, battery life, this is my primary thing, this is what I care about, I hate having to charge my device, then this is something that you want to consider. If we compare this with the Fenix 6X Pro, some of the features that the Enduro did not get, we're looking at the maps, and we're looking at Wi-Fi, and we are looking at the music storage being on the watch. When it comes to Wi-Fi, that's something I never even set up on my Fenix. It doesn't really matter to me. My phone is usually around me, and so it will sync to the phone before it would even get a chance to sync to Wi-Fi. We talk about the phone thing. That's something else. People, different reviewers have been talking about the lack of maps and calling that a miss. As far as I'm concerned, now running the clothing companies, give a shout out to Lululemon or whoever clothing company you like to wear here, right? They're running clothes. They've gotten really good at creating pockets specifically designed for your phone. They don't allow your phone to bounce around. For me, I don't even notice my phone is in my pocket. I went through a period of time where I never ran with my phone. I hated it. It felt like I could feel it and feel it bouncing and all those things. Now, it just fits there. It's meant for it. And whether it's for safety reasons, in case somebody gets hurt, in case I get lost, in case something happens, in case I get hurt, I just throw it in that pocket and bring it with me. And so that means that I can use my phone for maps. There are some great apps out there, whether it's an AllTrails app, whether it's just your simple mapping, Apple Maps, GPS map, whatever you use. Or if you're out in the trails, there are some Gaia GPS, how that's the right way to pronounce it. I'll link to that down in the description there. But that's the one that I use if I'm out in the trails. And so especially if I'm trail running, forget even my clothes, I usually have a hydration vest or something on. And in that case, I'm not really worried about using my watch for maps because I've got a much bigger screen on my phone, much more detailed maps, and it's just easier for me to read. Maybe I'm getting old, but I did use the maps on the Fenix 6X a little bit, but in general, I found if I needed to know where I was going or figure out what was going on, I usually had my phone right with me. Same thing goes for music. I initially loaded up my Fenix with all my music and everything and paired my Bluetooth headphones and all that stuff, but I can't remember the last time I went for a run and listened to music from the watch because my phone is just always with me. And so if you're somebody who is interested in the Enduro for its long battery life, but considering shying away from it due to the lack of maps or the lack of music, I say think about how often you are without your phone, and then think about whether or not you can easily bring your phone with you or what your different use case may be. But if the battery life is what's appealing to you, then I think it is well worth that trade-off. The solar part, I haven't gotten to really test that out too much. I got this watch and the first thing I set out to do was a great moonlit backcountry ski trip. It provided absolutely amazing views, a great time. We were under what they call is the snow moon, and it was full moonlit. We didn't even need headlamps the whole night. You could go through. We set out at about 9 o'clock at night and managed to finish up almost an 8-mile hike by about 2 o'clock in the morning. And that was great. Not the best conditions for testing out the solar part of a watch going through at night. I then set out for a fun ski day with my son and we had a blast, but great day for skiing because of all the snow coming down. However, not the best time, again, to test the solar power of the watch. So that's something I haven't gotten to play with, but that is something that I plan to get and play with, and you will see that. We're gonna put out a big full review. I just wanted to get a first impression after a week with the watch out. So not much testing of the solar option, but I look forward to playing with that and seeing how I can improve the battery life using that. This is a physical therapy channel after all, so let's talk about some of the health and fitness metrics and the data that you're gonna be able to get from the Enduro. We're gonna have the always on heart rate on the back, so we'll have the LED lights, and so that will track our heart rate throughout the day. It'll track our resting heart rate. Garmin will use that in the calculation of your body battery, which is how it figures how much of a load or stress you're able to take on throughout the day based on how recovered you are. It will also track your stress through that, and we're also going to get all the sleep metrics, steps, stairs, all that stuff that Garmin's been tracking for a while. That's going to be built in with this watch. New that's coming out with this is that you are going to be able to have a trail running VO2 Max calculation. So this is not a separate from your regular VO2 Max, but for the first time, Garmin's going to allow your trail runs to count into your VO2 Max calculation. Prior to this, if you were in trail run mode on your watch, it didn't calculate your VO2 Max. It didn't put that data into what it used to calculate your VO2 Max. And the reason for that mostly is that when we're looking at your VO2 Max, what Garmin is using a whole bunch of software to figure out, okay, based on your heart rate, how hard are you working to stay at a given pace? And so over time, the more the watch learns about you and knows about you, it can use that to estimate your VO2 Max. The problem is, if you go on trails, sometimes you could be working a lot harder based on the terrain to maintain a much slower pace than normal. And so what Garmin did with when the Enduro came out, and they're going to be able to put this into older devices, is they're going to use some of the data from the accelerometer, and what that's going to be able to figure out is give an estimate of how the terrain is affecting the effort level that you're being required to put out, and it will use that to help put that estimation into your VO2 Max calculation. Now, one thing to note is you can turn this off. So you can go into the settings while you're in your run and turn off the VO2 Max trail in the trail run setting. And this is something you can't actually turn that off in the regular run mode. So prior to this, if people were going for a run with some friends who might be slower, or for some reason didn't want that run to count in their VO2 Max calculation, they would sometimes use the trail run workout mode so that it wouldn't count. And so now you'd have to go in there and you have to make sure to manually turn that off. By default, it is on. This is something you might want to do if you're running with people who are at a different pace than you normally would. Or one thing that was mentioned is maybe if you have a hydration pack on, or you're carrying some extra weight, then that might make a difference. And so that's going to play around with those calculations. And so you can go in and you can disable that and turn it off. All right, that's all for me right now. That's my first take. Hopefully you found this helpful and useful. And I want to know, what do you guys think? Is this something you're interested in? Is the battery life something that appeals to you? Do you find the missing maps and the missing music a bigger deal than I do? Let me know down in the comments. And as always, please like, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out, and we'll see you out there next time.